Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday Night Live. This is our fourth Tuesday Night Live, and I just want to say happy Tuesday and welcome. I'm really excited to share this training with you this evening. I'm going to talk about the different stages of language development that your child might be at. And then what that's going to do is give us a shared vocabulary. So going forward, we can talk about different strategies and different ideas to help your child. And I'll be able to refer to these different levels of communication so you'll kind of know what's relevant to your child. So just before that, while everybody's logging in, if you're watching live, if you can hashtag live. And if you are watching on replay, if you can hashtag replay, and that'll give me the chance to see who's watching. I see people arriving. I seem to be back on now, so I hope you haven't missed it. So hashtag live, hashtag replay, and if you're new to this, a hashtag newbie, say hello and comment in the comments when I'm talking about your child. So if you recognise what I'm talking about as being where your child's up to, let me know, and we can see what kind of different variations we have. So rather than it being, an assessment-based, very detailed, your child is at the stage where they're exploring, and they are exploring their environment, they're exploring people, they're exploring objects, they're exploring things, they're looking and they're listening and they're exploring, but they're very much doing it on their own terms. They're not really involving you in that communication yet. So they might be picking things up and looking at them, they might be wandering around the room, they might be touching things, they might be doing things with their own bodies to explore what happens when they bang or when they shake something. So this explorer is before they're beginning to communicate with us directly, they're exploring the environment. And that's really, really important phase for children. And, talking, it's about them sending us a message, a very deliberate message. If we think about normal baby development just for a moment, just to explore the difference between our explorers and our message senders. So initially, a baby will cry because they are responding to a feeling of hungriness or tiredness or coldness or wetness, and that feeling happens to them, and in response to that feeling they cry and they make it known. And as a parent, and as a tuned in parent, we say, oh, you're hungry, you want your nappy changing. We interpret those cries. Now the baby wasn't deliberately saying to us, hey mum, I'm really hungry. The baby was thinking, oh, my stomach's rumbling, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm now crying in order to get my message across. And the adult or the person with the baby interprets that message. So those children, those babies are not sending those messages deliberately. But when they move on to the message sending stage, they start to send messages deliberately. They're looking at you and looking at something else. They're taking your hand and taking you to things. They're putting their hands up and looking at you in the face because they want to be picked up. They're giving you a message even though they're not talking. And that phase again can be happening for some children for a long time before those first words come. Our third phase is our first words, and this is when children start to use words to communicate that message. So they might be using single words, sounds, words that we know what they are but other people don't. They might not sound quite like them, but we accept those as being words because they're telling us and they're looking at us and they're sending that message. We're not worried about at this stage whether they're clear or not. We just want children to use those words. And we want them to develop their vocabulary and keep on adding words to it till they get to about 50 words. And once they've got these 50 single words, which if you saw my poster earlier on in the group, you know, have got to be important to them, relevant to their life, interesting. Those new words will always be developing around what is in that baby's or child's environment. So those first word users carry on learning single words and using them to send messages until they get to about 50 words, and then children start to combine words together. So they start to put two-word phrases, and these are our phrase users. So phrase users are beginning to combine ideas. They might be adding verbs and nouns, or they might be adding a description, big teddy. They might be saying bye bye daddy. They might be saying cat and teddy, you know, adding together lots of different combinations of two words. And then once they've done this, they'll start to add more words, and you get 3 words and 4 words, and then grammar developing. And we're going to call these children our sentence users. So just to recap, we've got our explorers who aren't yet sending us messages communicatively. We've got our message senders who are definitely telling us things. We've got our first word users who've just got lots of single words that they're using to communicate. We've got our phrase users, we're beginning to make these combinations of phrases, and we've got our sentence users. And that gives us a way of kind of talking about children. Now, we talked last week about how different areas of development happens, and for some children, you know, it doesn't always happen as the textbook says. I mean, for most children, that's probably true. So there's some children that have those words, but they're not necessarily using them communicatively, or there's some children who are using sentences, but they're so unclear that it's really hard for them to get the message across. So these are very generalised terms that we're going to be using to talk about different areas of development. But obviously for your child it might be something different. And you know, I'd love it if you added into the chat box what your child's doing, where you think they fit in, and if they're doing something that doesn't quite fit into this model. The other thing that's really important to consider is children's communicative ability. So how are they interacting with us? So for some children, they're very sociable and very able to give a message, to communicate and initiate with us, but also to respond to us if we're asking them, if we're calling the name, if we're asking them a question. So we would call these children sociable children, and they're very able to both initiate and respond. Now, sometimes when communication is difficult for children, it's a little bit chicken and egg which comes first, but for some children, they're very good at initiating, but not very good at responding. And what that looks like is a child who doesn't really answer to their name, and they just seem to be in their own world, but if they want something, they'll come and they'll give that message to you. And you might have heard these children being referred to as kind of having their own agenda. So if it's on their terms, absolutely fine, more than happy. But if it's something that you want them to do, then they're not really very willing to do that. And why I said that was chicken and egg, because you can understand that for some children, if communication is difficult and talking is difficult and understanding, actually a really good safety mechanism is to kind of go la 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 la, no, I'm not paying attention, I'm going to do it on my terms because actually I can't do it and I can't interact with you and I can't talk back. So if I keep it that I'm the initiator and not the responder, that makes life a bit easier for me. So those children would be own agenda children. For some children, they find it really difficult to both initiate and respond. So they don't initiate messages with you and they don't really respond. And these children we would call passive communicators. So, the world kind of passes them by and they might be very happy and very settled children. But in terms of communication, we're a little bit concerned about them because they're neither able to respond to us or to initiate any communication with us. And so, we would call those children passive, and we'll talk a lot about those in the coming weeks. And the last one is a reluctant talker. So again, with that dynamic of initiation and responding, a reluctant communicator would be a child who will respond to you if you ask, but they're not going to come and initiate anything. And those children might be the ones in a classroom or a nursery room that can go under the radar a little bit, and you might not even realise that they've got language difficulties, because if directed at their right level, you'll get a really nice response, but they're not kind of putting themselves forward and coming and using language in lots of different ways and different functions. So have a think about your own child, comment in the box below, let me know whether you think that your child is at the exploring phase, whether they're a message sender, are they a first word user, are they a phrase user, or are they a sentence user, and then we can start talking about ways to support them. And then have a little think about the communication styles as well. So are they a reluctant communicator? Are they an own agenda communicator, a passive communicator, or are they a sociable communicator? And if you put those two pieces of information together, we can start kind of really picking out the detail of what kind of strategies will help your child. I've got a new freebie coming. If anybody hasn't downloaded their communication passport, that's a really handy document, 9 pages, fully customizable. If you have a look down the page, you'll see the link to that. It's taken me a while technology-wise to kind of sort out how I was going to get that out to people, but lots of people have downloaded that now, and hopefully they will be in nurseries all across the world, hopefully, with lots of information about your child. And there's tick boxes about what your child needs to support them. There's bits that you can fill in about what your child's likes and dislikes and where their language level is. And then anybody that's working with that child, any family member, can just pick it up, have a read, and they've got a kind of pen portrait of your child really quickly. I've got another freebie coming, and it's called All in a Week. So look out for that. That's hopefully going to be shared with the group in the next week or so, but I'm also going to put it out to the more general population on Facebook for people to be able to download. And that comes on the back of, there's been lots of publicity this week, and we all know that screen time is very detrimental to children learning language, and that we need to limit it. But what can we do instead? And that's where this freebie comes in, so look out for that coming. I'd also be really interested to hear about what you would like to see, what you'd like to see more of, and what you're finding really useful, because this group at the end of the day is for you, and I want it to reflect everything that you need and want from it. If you've not already seen, I've started a Facebook page. That's a likes page, and that's called Joanne Jones, the Early Years Development Coach, and that's going live, and there's content going to start arriving in there, so look out for that as well. So things are moving forward, and hopefully this is feeling like everything you need to help support you on the bumpy road of language development that I know a lot of you are on at the moment. Feel free to message me. I've been getting lots of messages in my inbox, and lots of people asking me things, and I'll help if I can, and if not, I'll direct you to somewhere that might be able to help you. Thanks very much for joining me. Thanks for watching this video, and I look forward to talking again next week. Bye for now.